The opening scene shows a couple arguing in a car. The man seems to be terrified of the woman, pleading with her not to touch him. Eventually, he loses control of the car, leading to a crash that engulfs the vehicle in flames. Surprisingly, the woman emerges from the fire unscathed. The scene then shifts to an accountant named Norman Glass, who is conversing with his co-worker Roy about an alluring blonde client whose husband recently passed away after just a year of marriage. Soon after, the said woman arrives in Norman's office. Upon seeing his late wife's photograph on the desk, she undergoes a transformation, adopting the woman's appearance, better aligning with his preferences. As Norman enters the office, he's left struck by her beauty, and she introduces herself as Addie. Soon after, the two fall deeply in love and tie the knot, now celebrating their first anniversary. They're not the only ones marking an anniversary, though. Norman's closest friend Dennis also has a stunning wife named Barbara, whom he married a year earlier. Later that night at 3:04, Norman wakes up to find his wife typing downstairs. He sneaks up behind her and kisses her neck, but recoils, remarking that she tasted odd, like something dead. Addie quickly gets up and rushes upstairs in tears. When Norman checks on her, he finds her vigorously scrubbing herself in the shower. Moments later, he glimpses a monstrous reflection of his wife in the mirror. However, when he wipes it with a towel, it reverts to Addie's usual appearance. Norman apologizes to Addie, but she brushes it off as insignificant. In the morning, Norman reluctantly kisses her before leaving and is perplexed because this time he didn't get any taste. He visits his doctor, Dr. Phillips, to seek advice and details everything, explaining that when he kissed her the previous night, she tasted awful, yet this morning he couldn't taste anything at all. However, Dr. Phillips dismisses his concerns, advising him to relax. Later, Norman visits Dennis's residence only to discover that his friend has abruptly left his wife, Barbara. Norman is puzzled by Dennis's sudden departure because the couple had appeared so content. Barbara reveals that he became irrational, uttering hurtful words, behavior she had never witnessed before. Norman accidentally cuts himself on a broken light bulb while attempting to switch it on, and Barbara remarks that they're all shattered. Norman reassures her that Dennis will return before departing. Shortly after, Addie emerges from Barbara's house, and Barbara cryptically remarks that it's Addie's turn next. That night, Norman discusses Dennis's situation with Addie, expressing confusion about why Dennis would abandon Barbara when they seemed so happy. He suggests to Addie that he would never leave her like that. Afterwards, Norman proposes taking the next step, suggesting they start a family, to which Addie responds that they should focus on dinner first, and then perhaps they'll consider it. While Addie prepares dinner, Norman leans in to kiss her, but once again recoils at a rancid odor. He diverts it to be the garbage and promptly takes it out. The following day, Norman is at work and asks Roy, known for his womanizing ways, if he has ever suddenly found things about a woman to be unattractive. Roy is uncertain and inquires whether Norman means something like a bad haircut or excessive makeup, but Norman clarifies that he's referring more to taste and smell. He describes it as if something suddenly bursts open, releasing a putrid scent just for a moment before vanishing. Moments later, Norman receives a call from Dennis, who urgently requests his assistance, claiming that it's after me. Meanwhile, Barbara visits Addie and, after making sure Norman isn't there, begins morphing into different types of beautiful women to find her next target. But Addie seems to be distraught about losing Norman when Barbara tells her she's going to have to start thinking about it too. Barbara reminds her that it's only a matter of time before he starts to sense the truth and discover her true identity. However, Addie stands to believe that Norman isn't like the other men she's been with before. Sometime later, Norman meets Dennis in a city park. Dennis says he needs his help and states that everywhere he goes, he can't escape her, saying she can read my mind. Dennis, clearly unhinged and paranoid, claims that Barbara is not what she seems. When Norman asks him where he's been for the past 3 days, Dennis replies saying he's been on the streets, stating she hates kids. He vaguely states that she is too perfect, and he witnessed the opposite of perfect beauty. Norman seems to think he's being delusional until Dennis mentions how she tasted and smelled. In the meantime, a strange woman approaches Dennis, whom he claims to be Barbara, and he shouts for her to stay away. Norman doesn't recognize her, but Dennis does, whereupon he runs into traffic and is killed. Later, after Dennis's funeral, Norman consoles Barbara and says that Dennis uttered some crazy things before he died, that he was like a different person. Although there's some connection to what Dennis said, Norman still is inclined to believe that he was on some kind of medication. After that, Barbara says that she's selling the place and moving somewhere else to start a new life, so he bids her goodbye. Later that night, Addie assures that what happened between Dennis and Barbara will not happen to them. As they're making out, Norman keeps commenting on her allure, how she becomes more and more captivating every day, and her physique is so immaculate and flawless. Addie redirects his attention by asking him to tell her a story, and soon after he begins feeling her alien form and pulls away, disgusted, leaving his wife to sob again. The next morning, he goes to Dr. Phillips, stating that he now somehow lost his sense of touch. He explains that he could feel her at first, but it's just that it wasn't her. Furthermore, Norman says it was slimy, undulating, and then nothing. He feels like his wife is disappearing, like he is he's losing her. Dr. Phillips tells him that the symptoms he described bear a resemblance to what is commonly called hysterical blindness. The doctor says that people reporting that they can't feel, even though there's nothing physically wrong with their sense of touch, believe that their numbness is real to them. Norman asks why he would suddenly get such a severe problem, but Dr. Phillips states that he's not a psychiatrist, but points out that hysterical numbness is associated with some form of deep-seated guilt or anger. Then Norman says that he was feeling guilty getting involved with Addie so close to her husband's death, but Dr. Phillips tells him there's no crime in what he did and not to beat himself up. Lastly, the doctor states that whatever he's experiencing is just all in his head. When Norman gets back home at night, everything seems dark until the lights flicker and he discovers Addie has thrown him a surprise party because he's been stressed out lately. He's surprised to see his doctor at the party, and everyone compliments his wife. Soon after, the doorbell rings and Norman answers it. The woman introduces herself as Angie, but is actually Barbara, seemingly morphed into another woman, with a different voice as well. Angie claims she met Addie at a farmer's market the previous week, and the two instantly became friends, and she as well compliments his wife, saying he's a lucky man. Sometime later, Norman is outside standing when his co-worker Roy finds him and asks him to come back inside. When Roy says that his wife is trying to do something nice for him, Norman answers stating that they never have people over, except Dennis. He wonders why she threw a party tonight, but Roy doesn't see what Norman is implying and just says that maybe she wanted to cheer him up. Then Norman starts uttering the compliments the invitees gave about his wife, like how beautiful and perfect she is, which he believes she might have somehow manipulated them to say those things. Roy then leaves him and gets back inside, assuring the concerned Addie that Norman had a lot to drink and will be fine tomorrow. Roy then talks to Addie about how he wishes he had somebody to do this kind of stuff for him, even though he doesn't seem like that kind of person, given his reputation. Roy says he spent half his life looking for a life partner. When he leaves the room, Addie sees Norman blankly staring at her. After the party, he admits to the things he's been experiencing about her, and thinks what the doctor said about it being just a psychological issue is an understatement. Addie then tells him that whatever it is, they can work it out. Norman then apologizes again for the terrible things he thought about her, and Addie suggests they take a vacation. After that, she goes over to the kitchen to make him a sandwich. At that moment, Norman begins to hear the slimy creature's footsteps. As he gets closer to her, she realizes what's happening and runs crying upstairs again. All the while, Norman is still hearing those footsteps. He tries telling himself that she didn't sound like that and it's all in his head. Afterward, Norman goes upstairs to their bedroom to apologize, saying it's not her fault and believes he's mentally ill. She's sitting in the dark, having broken the light bulb just like how it was in Dennis and Barbara's house. When he asks her why she broke it, she answers saying she doesn't want him to see her. Addie is finally forced to admit the truth. She and Barbara are aliens whose ship crash-landed on Earth some time ago. To humans, they are repulsive creatures in their natural form, apparently of aquatic origin. But since they are stranded on Earth with no way to leave, they decided to try to blend in and live out the rest of their lives as human women. Addie says that she can't control what he sees anymore, stating that after a year of being so close with one person, it always breaks down. His mind, like others, will become immune to her control. She reveals that when he felt her, she was afraid to reveal herself to him, so she just blocked out his senses completely. Addie transforms into her natural form, urging Norman to see beyond appearances, but he reacts with horror and flees. Norman's mental state deteriorates, and he is taken away by paramedics while declaring Addie a monster. Barbara, now known as Angie, stands by Addie's side. In the final scene, Addie observes a jogger in a park who turns out to be Roy. She assumes the appearance of his ideal woman, introducing herself as Stacy, and they begin jogging together, hinting at her continued assimilation into human society.